Bo Camper in the right place at the right time.
Joe Rose, touchdown Miami!
All right, guys, welcome back to Out to Pasture. Joe Rose, Bo Camper here, and Joe, you know we've done a lot of good guys, been a lot of Hall of Famers and people, but a lot of them been in sports. But we've got a guy today that has kind of been there for 48 years through all different kind of sports, all different kind of things. Politics. He's worked with presidents, vice presidents, all developing all this communication. And this guy has seen more things maybe than anybody should see in their lifetime.
He could write a book. I don't think he will because I think he wants to be careful.
Kind of guy.
But I got to tell you, he has been grerait. We've been around him for a long time.
About
Harvey Greene.
I met George. I met him when I knew George Steinbrenner. I had met George Steinbrenner at Pompano Park. Kind of became a little bit friendly with George, and that's the first time I think that I met Harvey Greene, and so he's it's been hard to track down. My man's busy all the time now.
Oh, he's getting older, but he's busier.
No, he doesn't stop. He doesn't stop. He's got the first nickel that he earned, and so he's still trying to earn more money. So let's welcome Harvey Greene to the show. Harvey Greene, Yankees, Dolphins, Cleveland, basketball. You've done a little bit of everything here, but we know you mostly from the Dolphins in that time. But as I said, I met you with early on with George Steinbrenner. So let's kind of start there and tell us about your association with the Yankees and George Steinbrenner, and let's let that kick it off.
I'll do that, but first, I just want to let you know these are the people I've been lucky enough to work with throughout my career: George Steinbrenner, Billy Martin, Lou Piniella, Don Shula, Jimmy Johnson, Nick Saban, Bill Parcells. They all won multiple championships.
Yeah.
None of them with me. So they looked at me as a little bit of a joke.
Well, look, but they've all got one thing in common with you. They're Hall of Famers. You're a Hall of Famer. You got inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and congratulations for that. And certainly well deserved. It puts you in the same stratosphere as all the guys you just mentioned.
And Kim, I'll tell you, when I thought they'd write the book of great NFL PR directors, I really always thought that I'd be among the very first to buy it. So I was very happy to find out that I made it. It's in a great place. It's by the bus on one side. So I told Bob Breesy that if his bus starts to talk, you better be careful because I'll be down the hall listening. The best thing is it's in a great place because it's right by the bathroom. So everyone's going to have to see it whether they want.
There you go.
But going back to George, I really learned a lot from him. But I learned real early, and I know we talk about aging and what time can do, and this is really a story about the difference between technology then and technology now, and why, if it was the way it is now back then, I might still be with the Yankees. My first month, George hires me. I go to spring training. He doesn't know me. I don't know him. And Sports Illustrated writer Ed Swift comes down to do a story about George for SI. So I figured, okay, fine, I'll take him out to dinner the night before to kind of just loosen him up a little bit and see what he wants to talk about. And we did. We went down. Spring training was in Fort Lauderdale, so we went down to 15th Street Fisheries, which still exists. This is in 1989, in a day without cell phones or even beepers, really. And so I took him out to dinner. I got back to the hotel in Fort Lauderdale at 9:30, and when I got to my room, the red light on the phone was on. And for those who don't know what that is anymore, that means there's a message waiting for you. And when you're the Yankee PR director, that red light could be one of two things, either an illness in the family or George is looking for you. And after a while, you start to root for an illness in the family. So anyway, I found out George was looking for me, so I called him back at around 9:30, and I got him, and he says, "Harvey, where were you?" And I thought, hey, I can tell him I was with the writer he's about to be interviewed with tomorrow. I was kind of loosening him up a little bit. And I got as far as Mrs. Steinbrenner, and he said, "Well, I really don't care. From now on, I want you back in your room at 9 o'clock every night so I can find you. We don't have a cell phone. That's the only way he can reach me." So here I am, 30-odd years old, in Lauderdale, basically during spring break, being told I had to go back to my room at 9 o'clock every night. I thought, that's crazy. So the next day, the New York writers were going to take me out to dinner. It was my 33rd birthday, so they could take me out somewhere. I said, "Hey, guys, that's great. I really appreciate it. But understand, I got to be back by 9 o'clock. And they said, "Why 9 o'clock?" I said, "Well, George hit me with a curfew. I got to be back at 9 o'clock every night." Can you believe that? I was able to stay out later 20 years ago when I got bar mitzvah than I can tonight. So anyway, there's the second part of the story. So we went back out, and I told the writers that, and that was before a cell phone. If there was a cell phone, I could have done anything and stayed with them. It was also before Twitter. So the relationship with the media back then was a lot more informal. You really didn't have to worry what you said because it's not like they're going to put it on Twitter. So I go back to my room. I get back at 9:30. The next night after dinner when they took me out, I got back at 9:30, about 9 o'clock, and the phone rings at 9:15, and it's Steinbrenner. I said, great, I'm in my room. He'll know that I listened to what he told me. I picked it up, and the first thing he says, you're fired. That's the most stupid thing I've ever seen any PR guy do. I can see you're not fit for this job. You're fired. Just get out of here. Go back to New York tomorrow morning. Just get on a flight and get out of here. You can't handle this. I had no idea what he was talking about. So I called Lou D'Amelio, my assistant back in New York, and I said, this is 9:30 at night. I said, Lou, what happened? George fired me. Do you know why? He says, you haven't seen the New York papers? And again, this is technology before the internet. You had to do back then. I said, no, what's in them? He said, you're on the back page of the Post in the news. I said, what are you talking about? He says, did you tell them that George hit you with a curfew? Yeah, I did. I said, that was the back page of both papers, the Daily News.
Wow.
Mr. Flack, go to your room. Back page of the Post. Steinbrenner, the PR guy. You got a curfew. Be home by 9. The whole back page of the Post and the News were those two stories. So I really thought I got fired. I said, again, before Twitter, you don't talk about that's talking about that. So I called up the Yankee PR guys, and we're like a POW group. We kind of have this shared experience. So I called up Mickey Morabito, who was number 2 on the list of George's 10 PR guys. And I said, Mickey, what do I do? George fired me. How do I get another job? He said, oh, don't worry about it. He's just blowing off steam. He's don't forget about it in the morning. I said, no, he's fired me because of these stupid stories in the 2 papers. He said, don't even worry about it. So I called up Larry Wall, who some of you guys knew, and it was Yankee PR guy. It was actually my roommate at Penn. And he said, oh, I got fired 5 times. Don't even worry about it. George won't even remember it. Just go back and show up for work the next day. Well, I didn't believe either of them. I made a reservation at 10 o'clock on Eastern Airlines, which doesn't even exist, to go back to New York, and I thought I was fired. So I'm getting ready to leave at 9 o'clock in my hotel room, and the phone rings, and it's my secretary in Fort Lauderdale. He says, where are you? George is looking for you. I said, and he fired me yesterday. Oh, he's not going to remember that, but you better show up now because he's looking for you. So I get in my car, and instead of going to the airport, I go to Fort Lauderdale Stadium. I walk in, and there's Steinbrenner, and he says, Harvey, where were you? We start work at 9 o'clock. The next time you're late, you're fired. I said, yes, sir. Fine, I'll do whatever you want. I went to my desk, and I learned my lesson. And I was fired 5 times, but that's the only time I actually thought it might happen. And it was all because of technology.
Harvey, that's incredible. And by the way, there's some great stories because you've been through so much, as Bo said earlier. I love the story. So you go from working for George and the New York Yankees, the owner of the New York Yankees, and now the Miami Dolphins are interested in hiring you. Talk about that when you let George know about that story.
Oh, when you try, George will fire you if you're not loyal to him and go against what he actually tells you and means, but you just don't leave him. It's like the mafia. So I remember I went in, and when I got the job offer from Tim Robbie, I said, how am I going to, this is in the middle of the season now. This is during spring training down here, but the season's about to start because it's the off season for the Dolphins. So I said, how am I going to tell George that I'm leaving the Yankees? And so I go in one day and I say, while we're in Fort Lauderdale, I said, Mrs. Steinbrenner, I hate to tell you this, but I got a job offer to be the PR director for Miami Dolphins. And so I'm going to leave the Yankees in a couple of weeks. And he said, Joe Robbie hired you? I said, yes, sir. He did. He said, well, we'll see about that. And I said, this doesn't look good. He picked up, he told his secretary, get me Joe Robbie on the phone. And obviously he knew Joe because he's down here in Fort Lauderdale. And I'm saying they're friends, but they know each other. So he gets on the phone, and it's not on speakerphone. I can just hear George as part of the conversation. Joe, George Steinbrenner here. Did you hire my PR guy? Oh, you did? Without talking to me? Yeah. And at that time, Joe Robbie was trying to get a baseball team for the stadium, as you might remember. This is before the Marlins came into existence. He was trying to get a team for the old Joe Robbie Stadium. And I can hear, Joe, you know that baseball team you want? Well, you're not getting it. And I knew I was pretty good at what I did, but I didn't think I was worth a $10 million baseball team.
Wow.
And I thought what happened was Joe Robbie would give in and say, okay, Mr. Steinbrenner, you're right. I need your support. I take it back. I'm not going to hire him. I thought he would say that. And if he did, the minute he hung up the phone, I know George would fire me for insubordination and mean it. I thought my goose was cooked. And you guys know Joe Robbie. You don't back him in a corner. It doesn't matter who it is.
No.
And I heard part of his conversation, but I heard more of George saying, Joe, you really want to do this? You really think he's worth a baseball team? And Joe, God bless him. I know there's a lot of criticism about Joe Robbie, but I'll never have it for what he did. He stuck to his guns, and he eventually negotiated with George when would be a good time to leave. And so that was done, but Joe had a bend. George got his revenge. I was supposed to leave in early May to go back up to New York to start. The season's already starting. And so that's when I was supposed to leave the Dolphins before the draft. And George somehow kept going to Joe Robbie. No, I need him this week. I need him this next week. I need him next month. The draft came and went. Scott Stone ran the draft PR-wise, and I was still in New York and at the baseball game. And the Yankees the Yankee writers would put up a note in the press box. Number of days Harvey Greene held captive by 10, 20, 30. It was like when the Iraq hostages, they had the number of days they were kept hostage. Well, they had that sign up for me. Every day they'd cross out the number and add the date. I think it got to like 72 days before I finally left and came down and joined the Dolphins.
Yeah.
We just right before the start of training camp. So George did get his revenge, but I give Joe Robbie credit. At least he stood up for it and was able to finally bring me on board. Otherwise, George certainly would have fired me after Joe turned down
Amazing.
my ability to do it.
Amazing story.
Harvey, I thought I knew all about you, and then I started doing a little research, looking at it, and I didn't realize you were in the world of basketball. I didn't know that basketball was in your repertoire there, and I know you work for some pretty good teams and some players, and guys like World Be Free and some of these other guys that you were around, and so I was surprised to hear that, and how are those guys?
Well, they were great. I worked for the Cleveland Cavaliers for 3 years, and like every other team I worked for, we weren't very good. But the best thing is it gave me opportunities to work the Olympics. So, For example, in 1984, I worked as a second in command for the men's basketball competition in Los Angeles. And that was a great U.S. team that had Bobby Knight as head coach, that had Michael Jordan, Patrick Ewing, some other great players, and it was basically the best amateur team of all time. So my job after the game was over, the gold medal game, was to go into the U.S. locker room to get some quickie quotes because we had the gold medal ceremony, and then we had drug testing, so it'd be at least an hour before any media can talk to the players. So I was supposed to go in and tell get some quick quotes. And the PR guy for the U.S. basketball team at that time was a guy by the name of Haas Brock, who was the PR guy for the for the Cotton Bowl. And he was supposed to tell Bobby Knight that one person is going to go into the locker room and get some quick quotes and then get out so that they were able to get something to the media. And he was supposed to tell Knight that. So the U.S. wins the gold medal. I go in the locker room and I see Coach Knight. I'm wearing this green LAOC outfit, Los Angeles Olympic Committee outfit. So I obviously didn't look like a writer. And I go into Coach Knight and said, Coach, I just want to get some quick reaction. Who the hell are you? And I said, well, he's got to know I'm the guy getting the quotes. I'm in there with this lime green outfit. I don't look like a writer. So I tried to tell him I was a quote guy. I said, Coach, I'm supposed get the hell out of my locker room. And then I realized he didn't know what I was doing in there.
Right.
And you guys know this because you've been around Coach Shula. I made the ultimate mistake of trying to explain to him what I was supposed to do in there.
Right.
So I said, Coach Knight, I'm supposed to get the hell out of my locker room before I kick your ass out. All right. Three's a charm, right? I figured I better get out. So I got out, and Brock is standing right outside the locker room. I said, hey, Haas, Coach kicked me out. And the reason he was called Haas is because that's what he called everybody. He turned to me and said, Haas, I forgot to tell him. So that kicked out. But meanwhile, all these writers waiting for me. And I knew a lot of them from my days I was still in the NBA at that time with the Cavs. So they came up to me and said, "You guys got anything? You got anything for me?" And it was my last day. I was, the Olympic competition was over. I was going back to Cleveland the next day, so I really didn't care what happened. I said, "Yeah, I got a quote from Knight." "Oh yeah, what did Coach Knight say?" "Get the hell out of my locker room before." No, again, that was
That's
before
funny.
Twitter. All the guys cracked up. I said, obviously, you can't write that. And none of them did. But that's what my time in basketball was about.
Yeah. We got to talk about a guy that we all, know very well, and that's Don Shula. You worked for him for a long, long time, along with a list of other coaches that Bo and you had mentioned earlier. I always wonder, because we all do speeches and we talk about Coach, that he was tough, disciplined. For you, what was he like to work for?
Well, the very first time I met him, I actually got him to laugh. And I knew how tough he was. And a lot of people who knew him well, Chip Namias, Eddie White, they were friends of mine, told me what to expect. So I go into Coach Shula's office. Now, again, we're at St. Thomas. And I introduced myself. He says, yeah, I heard about you. And, obviously he knew I was a Joe Robbie hire, which wasn't necessarily the greatest resume to bring. But
Not a good way to start.
Yeah, and he said, you know, it can be tough to work with. I said, Coach, I heard that. But to be honest, I got fired 5 times by George Steinbrenner. I'm pretty sure if I screw up here, you're only going to fire me once. And he cracked up, and we had a great relationship ever since. And you know how he is. He's fair. He can get mad. He's got that thunderstorm look when he gets mad. But if he respects you, after it's over, 10 minutes later, he'll come up to me when I get that look, pat me on the back and said, okay, what interviews do I have? So that was the great thing that I really loved about Coach Shula, was that he was fair, and once you gained his respect, you were able to work with him and understood how he worked. And I learned a lot from him. I'll tell you a very 30-second story. Very early on, and you guys know what the winning edge meant, right? You see that. It's a mantra of the 72 team. You guys know. I had no idea what that meant. So early on, my first year after practice, Coach Shula, Gary Stevens, who was our offensive coordinator, and I would jog around the football field after practice before we would do the media interviews. And I'm jogging, Coach Shula's in front of us, and Gary and I are jogging, and we get to the end zone, and we cut inside the pylon while Coach Shula jogs around it. We cut inside the pylon. And he turned to us, and he says, run the whole goddamn field. Right. And I thought he was kidding. No, he was dead serious. Yeah. And that's when I knew what the winning edge meant. Yeah. No shortcuts. No. Do the work you're supposed to do and find the one thing that nobody else is doing, and you do it. And if you do all of that, that is the winning edge that you're going to have against somebody else who isn't doing any of that stuff. So that's how I learned from running around the football field what the winning edge was and what Coach Shula was all about.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's funny you said that, because I ran gassers in his group, and so he'd run a different speed, and we kind of had it all figured out. And, you're tired after a full practice, and you're looking to take a shortcut, except he had Carl Tassif, his right-hand man, watching those lines like we were 5-year-olds. And we finish, and Carl go, hey, Coach, Rose missed the line 4 times, and you're running extras, man. You weren't cheating the system, even in conditioning.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something about Coach Shula, and Carl was a part of this, and why I respect him. And again, I mentioned a lot of these people who I worked with, and while I never won anything with them, I learned a tremendous amount. If you can't learn from people like that, you're really missing a great opportunity. And whatever abilities I have were truly enhanced from the things I learned. But I'll tell you a story about Coach Shula and Carl, which will kind of amplify what you like, and will also show what the winning edge is. And you guys know this, when we would land somewhere on a road game, we'd always go to the visiting stadium to do a walkthrough there and go back to the hotel afterwards. Very few teams did it when I was there, but Shula still did it because it's something he did with you guys and before. So we were at the Kingdome, and we land at the airport, and we take our buses and equipment trunk over to the Kingdome. And right before we get to the Kingdome, we get to these railroad tracks. And the arms go down, and all of a sudden, here comes this freight train going across the tracks while we're stuck behind it. And it's got car after car after car, and we're sitting there waiting. And you know that we only have a limited time on the field, so the more we stay there, the less time we can actually spend on the field. So I can see Shula, smoke is coming out of his ear. and he turns to me, and he says, and this is after I advanced the trip, so I had checked all the things you needed to do. He turned to me and says, why didn't you know about this? What the hell have you been doing here all week? So I ride up in front with Carl, and I turn to Carl, and I say, Carl, did he really expect me to know what time these trains are coming across these tracks? And he said something to his credit I never forgot. He said, yes, and you know why? Because if Shula were doing your job, that's exactly what he would have done. So while he threw me under the bus a little bit, you really understand what makes him so successful. You learn these things, and the next time I went on these trips, I would make sure to cross every dot and cross every T, not most of them. So from that standpoint, it was really a lesson, but it's just another reason why Coach was so successful.
Yeah. So Harvey, speaking of Coach Shula, I've been through a lot of coaches here, and some of the PR people that have come after you, and I've seen where the coaches kind of get with the PR guy after and say, kind of, what should I say to the media? I don't know that Coach Shula was asking you those kind of questions when it came for his time to talk in front of the staff. Maybe I'm wrong.
Kim, I would tell you something, and the one thing I've been very lucky about, with all those people, I was able, you need the respect of the people you work for, the decision makers, to be able to do your job right. If they can't trust you, one, you're not going to know what's going on, and two, it's still our specialty as PR people to understand what the media are thinking and kind of prime them for what they get asked, and hopefully a good question to answer. All of them, including Coach Shula, in their own way, shape, and form, really respected the information I would give them about what they would get asked, and also the answers. They may not ask for it, but coming off the field, there are all these pictures I can show you of me with some of these people talking about what I thought they might get asked. And I'll give you a story about Nick Saban, which I know is not Joe's favorite person, but it's why I respected Nick. He was as tough on me as anybody, but he did the one thing that I always appreciated in his own way. He would respect my opinion. And very early on, his first game as coach, when we were still getting a relationship, I think at that point we developed a good respect element. We lost our first game, and so he came down, and it was on September 11th, 2006, the 5th year anniversary of 9/11. So Coach Saban, and people may not know, he does know what's going on in the world. He just doesn't let anybody know it. He understands the real world beyond the football field. So we were talking about 9/11, and that's the 5th anniversary and all that, and then we were talking about the questions he get asked. So we go down to the press conference in downstairs in the Davie HQ, and the first question he gets asked is, "Hey, it's your first game, you lost it. How bad is that? Around you and around the organization?" I said, "Yeah, it was a tough loss, but it's not like people are jumping out of buildings here." I went, "Oh God!" And I could see all the media, the Armando Salgueros of the world, looking, and really, is he really saying that? And again, this is the age before Twitter, so we talk about technology and how it changes over time, the good and the bad. So, Coach Saban went upstairs, and I told the guys, "Hey guys, I know it. I know what you're thinking. Before you get out of here, give me 5 minutes to try and fix this." And they said, "Okay. We'll do that." They didn't really have a relationship with Saban yet. If this had been a year later, they probably wouldn't have done it. But at that point, they were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. So I went upstairs to saw Ann Rodriguez sitting outside Coach Saban's office. "I need to talk to Coach." He says, "Well, he's in the conference room." He says, "I really need to talk to Coach." I says, "Well, all right, go in there." So I go in there, and he's looking at me like, "What are you doing in here?" I said, "Coach, you made a bad mistake downstairs. You need to fix this." I said, "That's the problem with you. You got me walking on eggshells. You think the most important thing I do is dealing with the media. We got to get ready for a game next week. I don't want to hear this. Just don't bother me with any media stuff." I said, "Coach, it's important." I said, "I don't want to hear about it." So I walked back outside, and I told Ann, "Let me know if Coach Saban calls, because I need to talk to him." So I get back to my office, and sure enough, 5 minutes later, Coach Saban, I get a call from Ann. "Coach wants to see you." So I go in, I see Coach Saban. He says, "What is the problem here?" He says, this, you got me walking on eggshells. As coach, you can't compare losing a game to 9/11. You just can't do that. They're going to make you look bad. He says, "You know what? You caused this problem, so now you better tell me how to fix it," which is his way of saying, "All right, tell me what to do." But he's never going to say, "I screwed up." He said, "You caused this. Tell me what to do. I mean, you caused it. Tell me how to fix it." So I tell him, go downstairs, saying, "Guys, we were talking about 9/11. We understand the magnitude of the day. It was something I shouldn't have said, but it was certainly on my mind. Certainly something I understood, and I apologize for saying it. I appreciate if you guys would give me the benefit of the doubt here." He went down, said it, and they didn't write it. That was the end of that story. But again, that's where relationships are important. If you can't have relationships with people, especially the players, the media, and the decision maker, the owner and the head coach, you're really not going to be able to function in any way, shape, or form. And I was able to have that with all those guys I mentioned. I was very lucky.
Hey, Harvey, was there one trait or quality with all those coaches? You named some great ones that have been involved with the Miami Dolphins, whether they're great college coaches or Hall of Famers, and Jimmy and Don and Parcells and the rest of them that you noticed as you went through your career that they had?
Yeah, the best thing, and I think it is what the winning edge is. They didn't miss anything in terms of how they went about their business. And I just don't mean preparation. They had their unique way of the way they wanted things to be on the field, what kind of plays to run, what kind of defense to be. But they also had a unique way for the most part, and there are some exceptions here and there, on how to deal with all the things that go beyond the coaching part of being a head coach. Dealing with the media, dealing with the owner, dealing with all the other things that came with it, dealing with the players. You guys know this. Well, both of you only had Coach Shula, but they knew how to take all the other things and deal with them the right way and put them where they belong. And so everything they did was only focused around winning, and the different ways they did it were reasons why I thought they were successful. And an example for that is with Parcells. I remember, and I never forgot this, is great advice. And this was his mindset and why I think he was so successful. We have a player I won't mention who got in trouble early on in his time as our VP of football operations, who got in trouble with a domestic violence situation. And Parcells got a call from Stu Weinstein, a security officer, as you guys know well, telling us about the problem. So he calls me into his office and says, look, our player so-and-so, this is going to come out soon. We got into a domestic violence situation. This could be a situation to deal with. And I said, well, Coach, what we need to do is we need to call the league, make them aware of it. We need to call, I think it was that time, it was Steve Ross. We need to make Steve Ross. I said, whoa, wait a minute. We're not doing any of those things. You got one job around here. He says, we're going to get hit with a lot of 3-alarm fires. This is one of them. Your job is to make it a 1-alarm fire, not a 5-alarm fire. And I never forgot that. And so we went about how we're going to handle it in a totally different way. And I never forgot the way he looked at things. Wow. Okay, there are going to be a lot of these issues, whether it's me or a player or assistant coach. How do we minimize those problems rather than doing something that's going to maximize it? And I never forgot that. My job was always to make 3-alarm fires into 1-alarm fires, not 5-alarm ones.
Hey, Harvey, you've been spent a lot of time in in the locker rooms and in meetings with coaches and stuff, but you've also been to a lot of events, and you've seen a lot of things in the political world, in the sports world. What are the greatest events to you? The greatest things that you've seen with your eyes where you were at that became iconic events in the world of sports?
Kim, that's a great question. I think unfortunately, we never made a Super Bowl during my time here and never made a World Series during my time with the Yankees. So it almost was individual achievements, which really isn't why we play the game, but in lieu of something that was the greatest thing. The closest we came was in '92 in the AFC Championship game at Joe Robbie Stadium when the Bills beat us, as Jim Kelly used to say. They beat us in Rich Stadium South because they always would beat us those times. And that's the closest we ever got, one game away. So the two most iconic things, I think the most was Coach Shula's 347th victory in Philadelphia. Remember, we had Doug Peterson leading 2 drives to get us like 6 yards each. I think he gained a total of 12 yards passing, but he let Stoyanovich kick 2 47-yard field goals. And to see Coach Shula carried off the field, I never got to see that after a key win. But I did get to see it during a key moment in his career, and I was proud to be a part of that. And the other, honestly, was to see the passing records that Dan Marino set during my time there. It was great that we had. You might remember we had Fran Tarkenton down to congratulate him. And again, we all know Dan. Those records mean a lot to him, but they paled in comparison to whatever team success he might have wished he could have had as a player with the Dolphins. So those individual records were great from that standpoint, and then to see both he and Coach Shula when they went into the Hall of Fame to be a part of that was truly meaningful because of all the people I worked with Dolphins, those were the 2 guys that I had the most impact with, and I really looked up to and thought I built great relationships with them. So
I'm kind of getting the point. Were you at the race when Secretariat won the Triple Crown?
Yeah, I was. It's the only horse race I ever went to. I was in college.
Really?
Yeah, I was in college, and I said, well, he won 2 races. I might as well go down to Belmont and see it. And he won by 32 lengths.
Right. Yeah.
I am never going to another horse race again because I've seen the greatest of all time. Why would I want to sully that? The only reason I changed my mind, and I think you guys would appreciate it, and this is why I love being associated with the Dolphins, because it is a family from day one all the way through. After Coach Shula retired, once a month, he, Howard Schnellenberger, Bob Greasy, and Hank Goldberg would go to Gulfstream. And eventually they invited me to join them. So I would see these races in Gulfstream. But all we did was talk about the Dolphins and the world. And I just kept my mouth shut. I was smart enough to be a fly on the wall, but to be around those guys. And that's when Coach Shula actually had a sense of humor, which we never saw in 30-yard years being around him. So those are the type of things that being with the Dolphins really meant to me. The relationships you build with people dating all the way back to the 72 team, guys like you in the 80s, and all the way through my career. And those are things that when I think about my time here, that's what I'm going to remember the most and be the most happy that I was able to build on.
Harvey, one of the most amazing things to me, and I know I've talked to you about this before, of all these relationships and all these sports people, and then all of a sudden they go, oh, yeah, he's going to be working with the Clinton family and the Biden family, and you've done some stuff in politics. How did that come about, and how do you – I mean, you didn't exactly do local politics. You went right to the top there, to the president.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you what's meaningful in just the two most recent trips. You know, I've been to 18 foreign countries with the Clintons and the Bidens, both when Biden was vice president and now as president. But it's something that we always think about how important sports are, and it really is to us in our bubble. But it's really the toy department of life. I mean, what's going on now, say with the hurricane, is important. Right. And I'll give you an example of that. Literally 3 days ago, I was with President Biden when he went to the west coast of Florida at St. Pete Beach and gave a speech in front of 3 destroyed houses about how we were going to help everybody rebuild. And we could see all these people were impacted in real life with their houses, which were standing there 4 days ago and reduced to rubble 3 days later. Those types of things are impactful. I'll give you another example. In June 6th this year, I went to Normandy with the president and Dr. Biden. It was the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Well, Kathy, my wife's father, fought in D-Day. He was a reconnaissance pilot going over the Omaha beaches on D-Day. And here I was going with the president and first lady of the United States with President Macron of France to honor the American servicemen at Normandy who fought there 80 years ago. Those types of things are unbelievable, things you don't think about. I never thought about things like that when I was in sports, that I would even had those types of opportunities. But we all understand what we do in our own world. And it is. You know, sports does a lot of great things. Winning games unites the community. All the great community service activities, the Dolphins and teams around all the professional sports do are great and really uplift a lot of people. But when you get into the real world, you can see the impact you're having on a much broader segment of the population, or say in this country. You realize that what these people do on whatever side you're on, doesn't matter, really can impact people in a much more tangible and important way than what we all like to do during our sports careers.
Harvey, part of what we talk about here on Out to Pasture is we don't have anyone on our show that's under 50 years old, and we talk about aging, and so I want to ask you a question about you've been around a long time, pre-technology. Technology's kind of come into the play, relatively late for us, and kind of new to us. There's a funny situation. So you've been around it, you're aging, but when you go in the locker room, those guys are all 21 to 30 years old. And so it's like you age around them, but you're dealing with people that are in that same age group of 20 to 31, maybe 35, but they're there, and you're climbing the ladder to heaven.
Well, yeah, I always tell people I kind of found the fountain of youth down here. It does exist every time I walk into a locker room for those 2 hours. But it's strange because what it does is it keeps you young culturally. You get to see all these, the people I hang around with are your age and or a little older, and I don't understand the culture, the music, the entertainment that they all do. But when you're in the locker room, you better at least understand a little of it and be conversational. Otherwise, they're going to look at you like their grandfather, not like somebody that can understand what they're going through. So being around those young people really makes you aware of what's going on in a world that you normally would never see because it's totally different than anything that you're exposed to by the peer group that you usually hang around. So I really enjoyed that. And there's a lot of music and don't ask me because I'll probably embarrass myself. Yeah. And I wouldn't even know who Taylor Swift is if I weren't hanging around players, for example. Yeah. So those types of things do keep you young. But the technology has a bad side in terms of aging. What I think it's done is, to me, the most important part of my title as director of media relations was the word relations. You want to build relationships, not only with the media, but the players, and be able to talk to them and just have an interesting relationship with them on a personal level, not necessarily a professional one alone. And now with social media, it's taken all away because they're on their phones. They don't need to talk to me. They're doing social networking on TikTok or whatever. They can talk to fans directly. They don't need the media. That's not the world I grew up in. I enjoy being around the media. I enjoy being around the players, having conversations and having these interviews and stories come out of interpersonal relationships and time that you spend face to face with them, not because somebody just posted something on Facebook and Instagram. I think that's great in some ways, but I think fans and all of us who are involved in sports are also missing out in some ways of that personal interaction that you get, that now all these technology advances in communications has made easy in some respects, but has made more difficult and probably less impactful and enjoyable from a technology standpoint.
Hey, Harvey, I've been a prankster, as you know, throughout the years. So I want to put closure to this once and for all. Stickers.
You're going to apologize to him?
I am. So the stickers that were on everybody's seat on the plane, their names, so everybody knew where to sit. They put the stickers, and we pulled them off, and I might have put 20 or 30 of them. I had a bet with somebody behind me, and I put 20 or 30 of them on your blazer when Nick Saban was the coach, and apparently you walked by him and you had all those stickers, and he wasn't real happy about that. And you also allowed me to speak to the rookie class.
That was the biggest mistake I ever made in my career.
So
basically, you told them don't cooperate with anybody but me, and I should have guessed that. And I said, this is not a smart thing to do, and I committed suicide by asking you to talk to the team. I never made that mistake again, Joe.
You know, the writers weren't happy with me. They were mad for a long time.
Me. They didn't care about you. They weren't happy with me. I can't tell you how many said, what are you, crazy? You're putting Joe Rose to talk about the media? They didn't say anything to you. They all came to me and thought I was nuts.
I was trying to build up relationships with the young players. They're going, this guy, man, this is kind of funny.
No, he was trying to get him to come on his radio show every morning. That's what he was trying to do. Nothing more than that.
Harvey, you're a good sport. We're still talking, Harvey, so it's good.
Yeah, but Joe, you know what? Kim didn't tell me you're on this podcast. If he did, I would have said no.
That's honest, Harvey. Thank you.
That's what we expect out of you. Honesty. True honesty. Hey, Harvey, I know you're a busy guy, and we certainly appreciate
great stories,
having you join us. A lot of good stuff there. And look, we could probably sit here for 2 or 3 hours and go back and forth with stories. But I've over the years, I don't think I was with you when you came to the Dolphins, but I certainly built a relationship with you again, starting back with when I met you when you were working with George Steinbrenner back there, and you've always been a straightforward guy. I knew what you said was you meant, and there was truth to everything, and I've also always respected what you did. Although I still question, why the hell do you get a new shirt and take every freaking button off of it before you put it on? That and eating hot dogs without any condiments on, it just blows my mind.
Goes back to when I was a kid. Not worth the time to talk about it. I didn't want to say seriously, guys. It was great being on with you guys. I know you have a lot of different guests with a lot of different subject matters. I think you're doing a great job in expanding things beyond the sports world. I know that's what we kept to here, but I just want to wish you luck moving forward. You guys do a great job with a lot of different subjects and a lot of different people. So continued success with that.
Thanks, Harv. Appreciate it,
Harvey.
Thank you,
Greene, man. Thanks for your time. We'll see you on the golf course when you're shooting 95.
That slice. He's still got that nasty ass slice.
No. He's got two things are crooked: his slice and his golf clubs. Most of them got a little kink in them.
Yeah,
he's a little bit out of control when he gets on the golf course.
If you see him on the golf course, you'll probably find me in the woods somewhere.
Thanks, Harvey.
See you, Harv.
But Joe, I tell you, we could have gone on for hours. I mean, he told some great stories. Tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, no, just
with
getting
all
started.
The people, all the character he's been around.
But baseball and football Hall of Famers as both owners to managers to the players, and then
by the way,
work with the Clintons and has been with the President of the United States in the last few days.
But you imagine all the meetings and stuff that he's got, but and he's like a steel trap. There's some things that he's just going to take to the grave with him. And so by the way, we're sitting there and I'm looking at that picture behind him. He's got a picture signed by Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle and Don Mattingly sitting behind him right in behind his desk.
Come on, that's just.
I mean, dude, right there. So man, what a good guy, and what a good guy. We'll have to send him one of our career. We'll have to send him one of our Out to Pasture shirts. I'm going to send it to him, but the son of a bitch will take the fucking buttons off.
Don't let him do that.
No, he'll do it. He's going to do it. So anyway, hey, by the way, if you want these Out to Pasture shirts, check out Scales. We got an advertisement coming up in a little bit here, and so you can check that out a little bit. And look, they're great shirts, and we got good stuff, Joe.
Good stuff going on.
All right, hey, that was a good one.
Oh, best. Love Harvey. Been with him forever.
Yeah.
You're not bad.
You really took advantage of him there a little bit. Those stickers on the jacket, and Nick Saban yelling at us.
He didn't laugh. He didn't go with it.
We'll save that for another show. Thanks for watching Out to Pasture. Hey, if you want to check out more, check us out on all the platforms. Spotify. You can go to YouTube to catch us. iHeart Podcasts. Anywhere you get Apple Podcasts, wherever you see your podcast, listen to them or watch them. Join us, and we'll have some more great guests coming your way soon.